May is my first month in a little while without any readathons, and it is also my birthday month. So I feel like I'm going to read slightly less than I have in recent months. So I got to make sure that I got a stack of Stella books to work my way through. At this point, I'm pre-filming just slightly. It's not too much, and I'm currently living in that haze. You know where like you have a big TBR left? There's only a small amount of days left in the month, but you're confident that somehow you are actually still gonna get through it. That's currently where I am. So this TBR is assuming that I finish my April TBR, which I think I have 3 books left on. One is only short, one's a romance, and then there's one that I'm slightly worried about. But just assume that I read those and that this is what I'm going to be reading in May. I mean, some of these I have to read anyway, so it's fine. Actually, no, I have 4 books I need to read before the end of April, so... And I just started a book that isn't on my TBR that's really thick. But anyway, May. I have 7 books that I'm going to be talking to you guys about in total. 3 of them are kind of my required reads. 2 of them are carrying on with the little projects that I've been working on that like nobody is holding me accountable to but myself over the last couple of months. And then the last 2 are library books, because my new toxic trait is putting holds on library books as though they're not actually going to come in, and then they do come in and I don't have time to read them because I never accounted for them in a TBR. Like, I'm putting them on this TBR because I have them, but am I going to read them? Your guess is as good as mine, but I'll tell you about them anyway. So we are going to get stuck straight in with my 2 book club reads for the month. The first one is for Catch Up Book Club, which is my epic fantasy read-along book club, and we are up to book 8 in the First Law series by Joe Abercrombie, which is A Little Hatred. This one is the first book in the second trilogy, which I think is called, is it the Age of Madness trilogy? Yes, the Age of Madness trilogy. I actually have no idea what this is about. Like, the First Law series is grimdark, and all I know is that the characters in this one are related, like literally related to the characters in the first trilogy, because there are a couple of standalones in this world as well, which I haven't really enjoyed. I'm anticipating some of the characters from those like making kind of cameo appearances or having something to do with the plot in this series, even though I don't think we're actually going to be following them. I am really excited to get into this one because I haven't enjoyed the standalones or the collection of short stories, but I did really like the first trilogy, so I'm hoping that this one has the same kind of energy as the first trilogy, and then I'm going to end up enjoying the First Law a little bit more again. And this one was actually a gift from Aaron, so thank you very much to Aaron for gifting this one to me. The second book club book I have to read is the start of my brand new Alcohol book club series. So over on Patreon, I have a fantasy romance read-along series where we read series in their entirety or up to date, depending on which series is chosen. And the series that we are going to be starting in May and running through to September, I think, because the second 2 books in this trilogy are a little bit bigger, is the War of Lost Hearts series by Carissa Broadbent. So the book for May is Daughter of No Worlds, and it is also available on Kindle Unlimited, which is I think how I'm going to be reading it. I've heard amazing things about Carissa Broadbent. This is going to be the first Carissa Broadbent book that I pick up, and I am ready. It's been a while since I've read like really good fantasy romance or found a new really good fantasy romance series, so I am hoping that this one is going to be the one. What I know about this one is that it is following a girl who frees herself from slavery, but she has to leave her best friend behind. So she tries to join this like elite order of magicians so they will train her and then she can go and get her friend. But to gain entry into this order, she has to apprentice to this like all-powerful fire wizard or fire mage. I'm not sure what the magical people in this world are officially called, and I'm assuming it's a romance between those 2. If you guys would like to get involved with Alcohol Book Club or join my Patreon at any point, it is always linked in my description box. I know that this one is a super well loved series, so I'm hopeful that it's going to be one that we all really enjoy. So the last book that I 100% have to read for May is going to be my Inner Circle Patreon pick. If you guys are unfamiliar with this, the Inner Circle members of my Patreon gets to recommend me a book. Every month I pull a book out of the jar and I have to read it in like the couple of months that follow. I am excited to see what comes up. I got a contemporary romance last month, and I have to say I'm torn between being in my romance era and wanting to start some like really good, like a new favorite epic fantasy series, and there are contenders for both of those things in here. So let's see what my May book is going to be. Okay, it's purple, which I think means that it was added last year. And this one is Homeland by R.A. Salvatore, and that is Chelsea's pick. I Have no idea what this is, so I'm gonna look it up. Oh my god, Chelsea, what are you doing to me? This is book 1 in a 33 book series called The Legend of Drizzt. It's also a D&D book, so this is gonna be my first foray into kind of like books that are associated with games or like RPGs. So I'm intrigued, but cautiously intrigued. So this one is the first book in the Dark Elf trilogy. So I think it's like an extended universe, like made up of multiple series, following a drow ranger called Drizzt Do'Urden, first introduced in the Icewind Dale trilogy. This is the thing with like D&D type fantasies. Like where do we start? Do I need to know anything about D&D to read this? We will find out. So this is a hero that has been established in previous books, and this I think is his origin story. I'm kind of just gonna leave it there. There is an academy, which is great to know. I'm cautiously intrigued about this. The reviews are actually pretty good. It has a 4.26 average rating on Goodreads, and that's 90,000 ratings, so it's also like a pretty popular one. We'll see how this goes. I've never read anything like that. Well, I've read fantasy before obviously, but with it being a D&D kind of tie-in, I have no idea what to expect. But thank you very much to Chelsea for recommending this one. So as for the series I've been working on alone for the last couple of months, I'm going to be reading Fire Study in May, which is the last book in the first series of the Chronicles of Ixia. This one is a high fantasy series following a woman called Yelena, who is imprisoned for the murder of the son of a general. She is about to be executed for her crime when the advisor to the commander, which is the ruler of this world, pulls her out of jail and offers her a job as the official food tester for the commander, tasting for poisons. So she accepts this because it saves her life, and also trains in the art of poisons under the commander's advisor and assassin, Valak. So the first book has like a Realm of the Eldlings kind of feel. It's like Realm of the Eldlings meets Throne of Glass in the setting. And then the second book opened the world a little bit wider and introduced some more of the magical elements and took us to like a different location. Book 3, I think, is going to be tying this together a little bit. I do think that this does not have as grand a plot as I kind of expected, unless that unfolds over like the entire 9 books in this series, like in its entirety. But it's very much, I feel like, making baby steps in this world as opposed to like taking down this big bad evil figure, you know? So I did really like book 1 and 2. It hasn't turned into a favorite series kind of as I expected it to, but I'm still having a really good time with it. I find it really enjoyable, and I think that I actually love the nostalgic fantasy setting of it the most. But I'm really excited to see this series out and then kind of decide if I'm going to continue on with the rest of the books and like read the 9 books in their entirety. And this one I'm buddy reading with my friend Beth. Like, we've buddy read the entire series together. Also, you know how I said that I wasn't hauling these paperbacks as I read them because they're all mismatched editions? This one is the worst. This one is an ex-library copy. I don't even know if all of the pages are here, so I am glad that I have like a special edition version of this, because half of the pages aren't even actually really in this book. I don't even think I can donate this when I'm done. I think I might actually have to just like, you know, throw it away. The second thing that I've been working on is Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere. Now, The Way of Kings Part 1 is the book that I am worried about actually finishing or even starting in April. That's the one that's actually concerning to me. And I do still need to read The Secret History, which is like a 150-ish page novella in Arcanum Unbounded that should be read before Stormlight. So am I going to be reading The Way of Kings Part 2 in May? Only time will tell. I hope that I can keep on top of this because I would like to be caught up with the Cosmere by the end of the year. This one, as you can probably tell, is a reread for me. Stormlight is like one of my favorite series. I haven't read Rhythm of War, but I've read the first 3 books, and I'm really excited to reread Way of Kings because the way that this is set up is that it is surrounding a war, but the actual war is not really the plot of this series. It's just our initial starting point. There is a race called the Parshendi in this world that are at war with the humans, and they have a peace treaty where the Parshendi actually assassinate the human king, and this kind of reinvigorates this war. The reason why the Parshendi were a threat from the humans in the first place is that they have, or like their land has very valuable resources, and we are following people who are either dealing with this war directly or are related to people involved in this war. That is not, like I said, the plot of this series. It's just kind of the catalyst. But the great thing about this series, the really interesting thing about it, is that it's set in a little bit of a weird world, but the characters accept everything as normal, and so they don't question the world around them, and because of that they don't explain the world around them to the reader. That does change as the characters become more inquisitive throughout the course of the series, but when I read Way of Kings for the first time I had no idea what was going on, and now that I know some of the stuff that's happening from reading later books in this series, I'm really excited to reread Way of Kings actually knowing what some of these elements are. And I do, like, I gave this 4 stars the first time around. I do feel like this has potential to be 5 stars upon reread now that I'm reading it with a little bit of hindsight. And then the last 2 books that I have are my 2 library books. So one of these is on KU, so I didn't even need to get it from the library, although I have established before that I do prefer to read books physically, because unless I'm traveling I just never want to pick up and like read something digitally. Like, I'd rather read a physical book, but like if I'm going away I will read like a ton of ebooks. It's wild. But the first book that I picked up is actually, I think both of these, I think this one's on Everand, which is Looking Glass Sound by Katrina Ward. I don't know anything about this one. I picked it up because The Last House on Needless Street was one of my 5-star reads of last year. This is one, it's not one of the ones that I've ended up putting a hold on. This is one that I just saw when I was returning books to my library, so I picked it up. As far as I can remember, this one is about 2 friends. One of them writes a novel that I think is about the friend or about something that happened to them, and that's all I know. I do like to go in blind with these kind of books, especially like The Last House on Needless Street. I'm really glad that I didn't know very much about it going in. I do know that this is one of Katrina Ward's like less liked books, so I'm going into it like not expecting it to live up to Last House on Needless Street, but maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised. And then the last one, do I know anything about this? The synopsis is very dramatic, so I don't even know if reading it will help me. No, it didn't help. This one is My Dark Romeo by Parker S. Huntington and LJ Shen. I saw this in the works, but I try not to buy books. We all know this, like it's a whole thing for this year. And I'm also not really supposed to be getting things out of the library because I need to focus on the books that I own. But there's just certain books that I feel like if I don't read them now, I will never read them, because by the time I get around to them, like they'll be irrelevant and I'll forget that they exist. But this says, like it said, he's my dark Romeo, but this isn't a love story. It's a guy that's using a girl for revenge. That's all the synopsis really tells me. It does mention a debutante ball though, so I'm hoping we have some kind of like glitz and glamour and rich people drama. That is the dream. But I picked this up because it reminds me of a similar kind of book as Magnolia Parks, where it's written like a romance but isn't a romance potentially, and I'm expecting it to be like super, not super dark, but like a toxic kind of will they won't they vibe, which we know is my favorite. Like, I live for that shit. So this plus Daughter of No Worlds and Homeland is my May TBR. Obviously if I don't get to the library books I can just return them. It's not a problem, but I'm a little bit concerned because it is my birthday month. I have friends coming to visit at the beginning of the month. We're doing some stuff obviously for my birthday. I do potentially also have somebody else coming to visit later in the month, and I'm also going to Slam Dunk, which is only a day, so not a big deal, but there are like quite a few things going on throughout the month, meaning that I don't know how much reading I'm actually going to get done. In terms of Shelve It or Scrap It, because my birthday is at the beginning of the month, so I have friends coming to stay, that is going to fall a little bit later than usual because I normally film it right at the beginning and then post it in the middle. I'm only going to start filming Shelve It or Scrap It, which is another set of books that are going to be added on top of this. I'm only going to start filming that in the middle of the month, so you can expect it to be hitting your subscription feed hopefully by the end of May, but if not, like it should be the first week of June at the latest. But that is about it for my May TBR. Down in my comments, let me know what book you guys are most excited to pick up, like the book on your TBR that you're most excited about for the month of May. And if you guys would like to leave me a little something but don't feel like you have anything to say, then leave me a little like angel baby emoji for the cover of My Dark Romeo. But aside from that, guys, please don't forget to like this video if you liked it and subscribe if you want to. If you head to my description box, you'll find a link to my Goodreads, Instagram and Patreon if you'd like to join me on any of those, as well as a link to my Bookish Kindle website, the Etsy for that, and a 10% off discount code. But that's it from me today, guys. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you'll go and nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.